City Council Committee of the Whole to order. Roll call, please.
Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Here. And we have a quorum. First item of business this morning is a discussion on the Humane Society agreement, and we will call on our Public Works Director, Guy Taylor. Good morning, Guy.
Morning, Your Honor and council members. Thank you. The Humane Society has been in existence since 1979. At that time, the city ceased being a humane society and operating a dog pound right in the garage beneath Lynn. So the Humane Society has provided valuable service to the city for that many years. The services rendered up until now have been paid for as rendered. We are looking to do a different form of compensation to the Humane Society and just giving the Humane Society an annual allotment rather than pay for services rendered. So that's the significant change in the agreement. Rolf drafted this agreement. We worked through it with Humane Society representatives, and what's presented to you here is agreeable to both parties. And the change with the compensation is the most significant change in the agreement. So we're just looking for a resolution to sign that, have the mayor and city administrator sign that agreement.
Thanks, Guy. Any questions for Guy? Or for the,
I'll offer that.
we have a motion to bring this to
I'll
council on Monday night.
second it, and I've got a question.
Go ahead, Anthony.
I was just wondering, what are we paying them now? I mean, how do we pay them now? Is it per animal?
We had been paying for different services rendered for boarding, for euthanasia, for any kind of vaccinations that would have been needed. We were paying as the services were given.
Right. And so do we know how much we've kind of spent historically?
It's a little over 7,000 average. Yeah. The last 2 years, 2022 was 7,246. 2023 was 7,398.
Other questions for Guy?
Did we, Bill, did we double that last year for this year?
We did. So we put the 12,000 in. Yep, increased it. So it's
Okay.
within the budget.
And then I have another question. Do we ever pass on any of the fees to, like, the lost dog owner or lost cat owner? Or do
We-
they pay to get their animal released?
Yes, we do. If that individual, if the pet owner is known, we do.
Right.
Definitely.
Thank you.
The Humane Society, I might add, they are serving us as the largest city in Otter Tail County, obviously, and so they give us the greatest amount of service. So they will be looking for increase to that $12,000, just due to the fact that we are using up the greatest amount of their resources.
Sure. Thanks, Guy. Any other questions? All in favor of bringing this to the council on Monday, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Next is an agreement with the YMCA for the Pebble Lake Lifeguard.
Thank you, Your Honor. City staff and Jeanette Hollingsworth, who's with us, we've talked through what it would look like to have the YMCA provide lifeguarding services at Pebble Lake for the 2024 season. And what we've come to is the YMCA would provide those services for basically the same amount of time as has been provided in the past, with the understanding that together the YMCA and the city would look at the YMCA providing lifeguarding services at the aquatic center starting in 2025. It's not committing us to that, it's just committing us to looking at it at this point. But so the contract for 2024 would be for the same amount, $25,000 for those services.
For the same amount of hours as well.
Yes.
We had discussed that, so thanks, Jeanette. Thanks, YMCA staff, for finding a way to make sure that we provide that service to the community. It's important, so we appreciate the partnership. Thank you.
Yeah, and for them to offer up potentially providing lifeguarding services at the aquatic center, hopefully will be a good thing for us. We don't have a pool of lifeguards, obviously, and that was something that we were struggling through, trying to figure out how we were going to come up with lifeguards. So thank you, Jeanette.
Thanks for the pun, Guy. Someone like to make the motion that we bring this to the council to approve this agreement? Thanks,
I'll second it.
Brent and Scott. Thank you. Questions for Guy or Jeanette? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have a discussion on special event requests, and we'll call on our community development manager, Clara Beck. Good morning, Clara.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. So as the weather starts to get nicer, we see lots of requests for special events in the city of Fergus Falls, and we want to be able to treat all of those requests equitably and address them efficiently. And in order to do that, I think maybe it would be helpful if we could put some policies in place that either staff can utilize or council can utilize when looking at these requests. So I think I'll just run through a few of the ones that we have in front of us today that kind of highlight the fact that some policies would be helpful, but that also require some responses from the council. So first, and the letter is attached in your packet, is a discount for a Center for the Arts. They are hosting a children's concert. They have not requested that it be a community event, but they have requested that the city consider offering them a discount on the use of, for instance, the stage or their garbage pickup, things like that. So is that something that council would be interested in doing, and if so, at what amount? Bill.
Can I weigh in just a little bit?
Yeah, please, Bill.
To kind of, as we start the discussion, we have an old policy on this. Clara, I don't know if you've seen it. I pulled it last
Probably
night.
have it.
So it was after after work last night from 2016, I believe. Yes. It's here. You've got it handy. I just gave Andrew a copy. Do you want me to run through the policy first?
Yeah, please do, Bill.
Okay, let me, sorry, Clara, that I didn't do this like yesterday morning, but we're going on the fly. So, special events fee waiver policy. So, at the March 16th, 2016 Public Works and Safety Committee, staff was requested to make recommendations as the city's special events policy. After reviewing the public purpose expenditures information memo from the League of Minnesota Cities and consulting with the city attorney, staff recommends the following. So a few bullet points here. 1, the city should follow the adopted fee schedule for special event charges. Requests for items and equipment should be charged consistently among all groups. The fee schedule should be amended to include charges for city labor outside the normal business hours. The fees should be charged at the actual rate of the employees performing the services, and that includes regular and overtime. Okay, so state statute makes no provision for waivers for any person, corporation, private institution, or nonprofit organization. Therefore, no special provision should be granted to such organizations. Although we may have many great organizations conducting special events, the city is unable to provide waivers or sponsorships for these events. The waivers or sponsorships would constitute a donation and is prohibited according to state statute. Now, as we get further down the list, there are some we can do. For instance, the Center for the Arts, we have specific statutory authority to support arts organization. You already do that as well as the city with an annual $7,500. So you could do the center under statute. So I want to just clarify that. Minnesota statute allows the provision of services to other governmental organizations. Other governmental units would not be charged for services related to their special events. This would include Otter Tail County, ISD 544, and other city departments. An example of such an event would be the homecoming parade. So the city supports that, putting out the barricades. We don't charge for that because we're a fellow governmental unit on that. Barricades would continue to be delivered and picked up by city staff for neighborhood block parties. The resident making the request would be instructed by the city staff regarding installation and removal of those barricades, and the city does appear to have statutory authority to support community celebrations. Therefore, expenditures for Summerfest appear to be a public purpose expenditure. So that's this memo, so we do that for Summerfest, for the Over the River Festival, and for Shop, Move, and Groove. You as a city council have chosen those to be community celebrations, which you can have under statute. So, sorry to,
Question.
but this is, I mean, but we can think out loud a bit about, so you go, because I'll have some other thoughts on, if it's a private, but they're offering free services in the community, how do we think about that? Because they're not making money off of it, so.
Can we ask a question too? Like, so as an example, the concerts are either the youth concert or the movies in the park. To what extent are they asking for city services? And
A Center for the Arts didn't put a specific request. They just said they would be interested in a discount. Is Michael here? Michael's not here this morning, but just a discount. And then Park Region has requested specifically that the city waive the fees for electricity, garbage, and potentially police presence. So we have a park fee that we would be putting in place. Which, Guy, what is that fee again? $50 per event.
thanks, Claire. I've always felt that if the city can be a partner to these events that are free and open to the public and everyone is allowed to take place for $50, I think it's a goodwill gesture to have these events in our community. We have city staff that's paid on salary. We're not hiring additional staff. I feel that's how I've always felt. So I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but
I would agree. I mean, it's like the one here that's for the kids. I think
Absolutely.
anything we can do for the kids is big time. We should step up and do it.
And I understand if staff has to go out of their way specifically for a private event that benefits a private business, it's a different. But if it's held in a city park and is open to the public and it's with one of the partners that we work with, I would like to see staff try to work with that within their regular day. Obviously, if there's things outside of the regular day, or if it's overtime or out, on a weekend, we'd have to charge for that. But does that fit within?
I was going to say, could we put like a maximum value as such, so that
Sure.
if it was some event like that, that if it was greater than, I mean, just for example, I don't know, $250, $300 or something, then anything above and beyond that would be charged. I mean, I must admit, like when we did, like, it does seem sometimes we don't have enough garbage cans out, and when we do some of these events, and you take like Speece Park, if there's an event at Speece Park, the trash cans that are there overflow within matters of minutes. So, but garbage is expensive, so.
Would it make sense to, within the policy that was passed in 2016, unless people feel strongly different, that we want to try to work and be a partner, that we could work that into that policy? Is it workable? I mean, kind of just the general sentiment that we have a cap, that it's not too much, but we also are a partner?
Is it legal?
That,
We'll verify that. And we'll verify with Ralph if we can do that
Yeah.
we know if we have statutory authority for certain organizations we do. We'll verify if it's a free event that our partners are.
sure. Like, like the concerts in the park, for example. I think you could make a loose, I think you could argue that that's open to the public and it's a community event, but that's me. I mean,
When I was doing research before this, I did see some language that I think we could lean on that says that council annually could set aside, kind of like what Anthony is saying, a specific amount every year that could then be accessed by events in the community. So you're just putting aside a set amount every year. So we could start that annually. But I'll get the exact language of that and work with Ralph on that and bring it back on Monday.
all right. Is that good with everybody? Yeah. Scott?
You had said that it would be a nice goodwill gesture. And I think that reflects the fact that we're not really talking about a lot of money here. And so, frankly, it seems like they ought to be able to afford it. It's just not that big a deal, and we probably don't even need to change any policy. But I can understand why we would want to work with, as you said, partners that have been a part of the city and that we want to be able to be helpful that way. And if it's a free event, that's different than if it's something where you got to pay to be there or a commercial event. It's just real clear to me. It just seems to me that if we've got a fee schedule, we should stick with it generally. I mean, there's reason for exceptions, but I don't know that these rise to that level.
Sure. You have enough direction?
Yeah, I
kind of
think
from
so.
Us to bring something back on Monday?
Yep. Yes.
Thank you, Claire.
So
Thank
then
you,
that
Scott.
brings us to street closures and sidewalk sales. Obviously, the city gets asked every year to do street closures for specific events, and in discussions with staff, what we've been thinking is that we would like to have some kind of a policy in place about when to do street closures and then how those are decided. And what we're kind of thinking is that we'd like to bring each request to council so that you can hear it and help us make that decision about whether or not that street closure is a good idea. Is that something that you're okay with if I bring some language with that about that on Monday as well?
I like to hear the events and kind of know what
Yeah.
they're asking
Yeah,
for.
Right.
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, great. And then sidewalk sales is kind of a similar thing. Our code allows for sidewalk sales, but it says that council should allow them. So we can either bring requests for sidewalk closures to you, or we could have some sort of policy in place so that staff can simply administratively grant those. Because those are, I mean, that's smaller. It's just taking up a little space on the sidewalk in front of a store. Thoughts on that, and if there should be a fee involved with sidewalk sales at all?
I don't think a fee would be necessary,
Okay.
and I don't think it's big enough that every time. But I mean, I think we should have, as you say, have a policy, some guidelines, maybe kind of maximum amount of times you can do it, so it's not every week. Maybe kind of, it's kind of somewhat seasonal, so it's somebody's not doing it necessarily in the winter.
Right.
And I think staff can handle that.
Yeah,
I don't
Okay. I
think
would
it needs to
agree.
come to the council.
I think if there's a policy and guidelines, then if somebody abuses it, then we can deal with that.
All right.
Great.
Everybody good with that? Yep. Claire, that gives you the direction you need.
Yes, it does.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving along. Planning Commission recommendation on cannabis zoning. Claire.
Yes, so the Planning Commission was requested to look at cannabis zoning following conversations that the Cannabis Subcommittee has been having, the Council Subcommittee, and they have come forward with some recommendations. They would like to recommend that City Council approve retail sales of cannabis in the B3 zone via conditional use permit, so that would include our downtown area. Permit the location and operation of a cannabis retail, micro-business, and mezzo business in the B6 zone, and enact 250-foot buffer zones around parcels that have licensed treatment centers, schools, and daycares. So that is the recommendation that Planning Commission has made. There have been further conversations with the Cannabis Subcommittee that I think maybe Kyle wants to address, and he's got a memo for you as well. So this will be kind of a joint conversation.
Thanks, Clara.
So to speak.
Nice pun.
All the puns this morning. Yeah. Sure. You come see me later. No, I'm just teasing. No, I just wanted to just say thanks to the Planning Commission. You as a council sent this to them. I think they took the topic very seriously and spent a good hour and a half, and they came back with a recommendation. And I'll just say, just as you as a council and just as we are as a community kind of torn on this, I think that they were looking for, something of a compromise that people could live with. Those recommendations from the Planning Commission, as Clara mentioned, were brought to the Cannabis Working Group last Friday, and there was a great deal of discussion regarding their recommendations and also the wishes of the council work group. So before you is a memo. I tried to just kind of piggyback off of the last memo that I sent you, kind of identifying what you can do at each one of these businesses. And I'll just go through this very quickly. But the council work group had suggested for a cannabis retailer that you go with a zoning of B6 or higher to include an I1 through I3 zone. For a cannabis micro and meso business, the recommendations are the same, that those would normally be in an I1 to an I3 zone. There was an exception that would be made that they could operate in a B6 zone if there were no industrial processing or processing of raw materials. Those typically, I would say, involve, solvents and hazardous materials, but food processing, like a bakery or something like that, would be allowed in a B6 zone, or packaging of materials would be allowed in a B6 zone. Cannabis cultivator, I think we talked about a B6 zone and an I1 through an I3 for an indoor grow. So that would be a large growing operation inside of a building. If you were going to have an outdoor grow, which I think is 2 acres, give or take, that would obviously be in an agricultural zone. Cannabis manufacturer in an I3, I1 through an I3, wholesaler in an I1 through an I3, and then the buffers, as Clara indicated there, would be the 250 feet from schools, daycare, residential treatment, and then the group also added from another cannabis business. So trying to limit the density of some of these businesses. So that was the recommendation of the committee, and I think that as the committee, we were hoping for a motion directing the city attorney to start drafting a zoning ordinance regarding these establishments. So.
Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Clara. Thanks to the committee for the work on that. Jim?
I have a question, Chief, on how many locations are we going to be allowing?
Sure. That's going to come to you in another ordinance under registration, but I think as a work group, the number that has been talked about is 3. So I should just clarify, I'm glad you brought that up. We're required by state law to issue at least 1 license, and then as the discussion with the work group, I think the comfort level there was to begin with 3.
Okay. I have a question also for the chief. I mean, what was the kind of like thought process in 250 feet from another cannabis business? Because I would have thought that would make it quite restrictive to keep having, I mean, if you start drawing, it's restrictive in the sense of how it is, and then you add another internal restriction of 250 feet, and what's wrong with them being next door to each other? I mean, I would have thought from a kind of a policy point of view or inspection, or if they were together, then it makes it easier. I mean, and I mean, people have choices. I mean, so they're just going to drive from one 250 feet to the other 250 feet. It seems like a nonsense type request, but
I'm going to let Councilmember Kwame answer that question.
I mean, what you're saying then is like, we can't have 2 retail outlets essentially that sell the same product. We're saying they should be segregated, and I think that's overuse of extending our kind of power, as it were, when I don't think it's necessary. People are going to go into one, or they're going to go into the other if they're only 250 feet apart.
Thanks, Anthony. Scott, did you want to respond?
The thought came from the existing language that's already in our code regarding adult use businesses. And in that case, it actually prescribes a 500-foot buffer between similar businesses. So I think 250 feet is not out of line, and I think the general idea behind it is to not end up with like Cannabis Row, so to speak, where this just becomes a real feature, so to speak, of the city. I think that your idea of it being more manageable and closer together might be fine if you're talking about some other business, but in this case, I don't think it can be treated like just another business.
And
Thanks, Scott.
I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other on this particular topic. I'll just say this, and we've kind of said this all along, that, you know, where we start isn't necessarily where we're going to end. So, you know, this is evolving. You know, it's very hard for us to navigate, especially with the state constantly changing things. And I think to Scott's point a little bit, and to yours, you know, when you're talking about allowing 3 businesses in town, 250 feet probably isn't an issue. But as a council, maybe in the future, you know, if this thing is just opened up where, you know, now you're allowing, you know, 20 licenses in town, you're probably going to want, you know, some type of buffer like Scott's talking about, just so that you don't have these density issues. But again, I don't really have a strong opinion one way or the other on this now, and whether it's an issue today, you know, might not be, but I think it's something that, you know, you'll probably have to address, you know, going forward in the future. So clearly up to you as council how you want to go
Thanks, Chief.
with that.
I think if we have 20 of these, we're going to need more police also.
I don't think you'll find them.
Scott.
I just want to say that when we were on this committee, we started out as not knowing what direction we were going to go, and I was completely against doing anything, and of course we have to. But we worked really hard on trying to make it I wanted to be really conservative. We can always expand it out. We talked about this quite a bit. We can make the rules, we can change them as we go, because the county or the state changed them since we started meeting, and they started changing them still. So it's a very, very early on and very young type of a situation. I think going into this, what we have here is a good situation. It'll be pretty conservative, but we can relax it anytime we want if we need to expand it out. So Kyle did a great job. He didn't choose sides. We asked questions. He brought us information. So I think he did an excellent job leading this group, and we couldn't have did it without you. So I'll make a motion to accept this.
Are we accepting Kyle's version, or are we accepting the recommendation of
The version that came from the council group, so it would be Kyle's group, I guess. Yeah.
There's a motion.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, and just to be clear, so after the planning commission met, we did meet, the chair of the planning commission came to the council subcommittee, so this represents compromise again, if you will, from what the planning commission.
When we met, we went through their recommendation. We went back and forth, and we compromised, and this is what we came up with, and they agree with this, so.
All right, so there's a motion to bring this to the council on Monday night. Any further questions of either Clara, Chief, or the committee? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Just the motion.
That motion carries. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, Clara. Next, we'll call on our city engineer to talk about agreement with the former dairy site and engineering reimbursement. Good morning, Brian.
Yeah, good morning, Your Honor and council members. Yes, for the past few months, I've been requesting information from Otter Tail Valley Railroad Company, my parent company, Genesee Wyoming Railroad, for assistance with 3 proposals we have for the development of former dairy and trail development for Stanton Avenue. I'm just going to go up to the projector here, just kind of give you what the 3 proposals are. So the first proposal came through with Stanton Avenue Trail Development, so what we're requesting from the railroad is approximately a 270-foot, 10-foot easement along the northerly boundary of Otter Tail Valley Railroad property. The second proposal, there's an existing at-grade surface crossing at Hughes Street that's coming at its end of its life, but we're requesting, once this is replaced, that this be relocated with pedestrian enhancement to a new crossing here at Broadway Avenue. The third proposal is a new at-grade surface crossing with pedestrian improvements for connectivity through the former dairy site to St. Andrews for the future. So upon further discussion with Genesee Wyoming Railroad, they decided to procure an engineering Benish as a consultant for the project management and preliminary engineering and hopefully construction engineering as we move forward with this project. Benish is representing Otter Tail Valley Railroad for the city. So the first step is to enter into a preliminary engineering reimbursement agreement. I've attached that for your review. Between the City of Fergus Falls and Otter Tail Valley Railroad. Upon completion of this report, it hopefully will lead us into a construction maintenance agreement between the City of Fergus Falls. However, we need to go through this process right now through the preliminary engineering for these three proposals here to see where we line up. I don't have a duration for this work. I do have a request in for the railroad company. It's to be determined, but I anticipate it'll take some time and everything, but I believe we have to start moving on this process if that's what we so choose. So the budgetary impact in 2023 legislation allocated $4 million of general obligation bonds for the development of the former dairy site. This is through DEET, and this is the proposed funding source. I will note though, we do have to finish out the grant process with the project manager, and we will have that executed prior to entering this agreement, so we can be reimbursed for this work. So as what I'm requesting is initiate public improvement 9775, and then to accept the engineering reimbursement agreement between Otter Tail Valley Railroad and the City of Fergus Falls in an amount of $46,443 for preliminary design. So I'll open up to any questions you might have.
Thanks, Brian. Any questions for Brian? We can bring this to the council.
I'll make
Brian.
that motion.
Thank you, Anthony. Thanks, Brent, for the second. Questions of our city engineer? All in favor of bringing this to the council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Next is the signal crossing agreement
Thank you.
replacement.
Back in February, MnDOT Rail office contacted me and wanted to meet with me to do a diagnostics meeting with Otter Tail Valley Railroad and myself. To my understanding, the rail signal systems at the end of their useful life and have been classified as antiquated. Therefore, MnDOT has federal funds for replacing these signals. The intersections needing replacement are North Freiburg Avenue, Cascade Street, Mill Street, and Summit. But I just want to note right now we're still developing what the scenarios could be for Freiburg and Summit. So I just want to talk about Cascade and Mill. Per MnDOT, the train speeds at these locations and current railway standards require crossing gates along with flashing light signals. Currently, right now, we just have flashing light signals. With the new crossing gate arms, it has an opposing counterweight, and this is what's determining with our existing sidewalks, we don't have adequate clear cover to get moving. This requires the sidewalks to be relocated outward from the street. However, once again, the surface crossing themselves are now wide enough to accommodate the sidewalks moving forward. So in addition to that, they're looking to do some cantilever lights and everything. So it's pretty much a full replacement enhancement for these two intersections. So once again, is what I did request, and I just wanted to note what's on the screen right here. This is a potential Mill Street improvement from the railroad. These are just exhibits right now. There's got to be a lot, but just for visual aid, I request these from MnDOT. But as what we're showing there is pretty much doing a bump out configuration on Mill Street. They basically want to have a 12-foot traveling lane right there, and we want to, requesting with the bump out, the new semaphore for the crossing flashing light can be placed away from the sidewalk, and hence what I mentioned, the cantilever can maintain adequate separation from the existing sidewalks. So to the next one, please. Now this is the next intersection, Cascade Street. This is a little bit more difficult, but something we need to look at and vet. Same thing, they want to do some bump out configurations. Obviously, I do have concerns with plowing and everything like that, so there's going to have to be some thorough design with this. But once again, looking to do some bump outs, 12-foot driving lanes with the crossing gate arms as well. We do have to consider the bike lanes too, how that's gonna work with this project, just ramping up and doing some sidewalks. But the most important feature I want to point out is on Cavour. So westbound Cavour, where it meets Cascade Street, as you can see, is what we're looking to do is maybe make a controlled right as you move westbound. The reason for that particular feature, once again, preliminary at this time, is because when these gates are operational and everything, there's actually, when you look at it geometrically, there's nothing there to prevent a vehicle from entering into the railroad. So, like I mentioned, this is preliminary. There was a thought that they wanted to put a dead end, close that road, but I said, that's something we have to talk about first, and we arrived at this just for preliminary design at this time, so.
Hey, Brian, just for clarification, like, trying to understand this picture, are those green bump outs, are those physical bump outs?
Correct. We're looking at curb and gutter. Plowing can be very difficult and everything with that, so I like tapers and everything, but this is our first step because we have no adequate right-of-way
Yeah.
and everything as well. So one could ask, well, if the city's not quite amenable to some of these changes, we could be liable for more cost doing longer, bigger gate systems, this and that. So we're kind of trying to get this at a reasonable weight. So
Scott, go ahead.
I guess, I'm trying to wrap my head around this thing. Even earlier this week, it was tough. I don't understand the bump outs, and when it comes to snow removal, it's going to be a total nightmare because we have to plow it, and then we have to come back and remove all the ridges. I'm sure because of the way it is. I don't understand. It's not going to be a very simple thing. So this is the best option you can come up with right now, or don't you?
based on the preliminary design, I presented this, Councilmember Rachel's, I requested just a visual aid from MnDOT. I said I can't come to the council without any sort of visual aid right now to even start the discussion.
I mean, the one at Spees Parks already are giving us a headache, I think, and that's just going to the citizens are already laughing at us about why we did it. And of course, it's because of the state recommendations, I guess is what you call it. So, I'm just concerned about it. It just doesn't make any sense, really. But
I would like to note that's why we're not talking about Freiburg and Summit. They
Right.
requested something similar at that time, and I wasn't comfortable with even talking about that right now until we could look at these two intersections.
okay.
So, MnDOT, they're willing to provide some funding for the city for the design and fully color eligible costs. That's to be determined, or a substantial portion, depending on the funds. If the city's amenable to this preliminary proposal from MnDOT, they'll prepare an agreement, and I'll bring it back forward to the council for further consideration and prior execution, and obviously additional discussion with this topic. So,
Thanks, Brian. Well, I guess we trust that you're aware of the challenges at this intersection and working with MnDOT to find the best solution. You bring it back to the council. Is that accurate?
yes, you're correct. This came up, I'm assuming they had some funds, so they're maybe looking to do some of these improvements this summer still, but they're reaching out right now just to see what we can contemplate.
Well, thanks for your work, and I'm sure we'll see more of this, but at this time, we can move Public Improvement 9776 to the council for consideration on Monday night if someone would like to offer that. Brent, thank you. Jim? Question, Scott, you have a question for Brian?
To what degree are we going to be required to do this whether we like it or not? I mean, is MnDOT just going to say, this is what you will do, and sorry, that's the way it goes? Or can we say, we don't want to do this. We think the signals are fine. We're just going to live with it as is and make them work for however much longer we can keep them. I mean, is it going to be one of these deals where we just don't have a choice and they're going to force us to do this whether we like it or not?
For lack of better terms, yes, and at our expense. So, said I haven't really broached them, but I can certainly ask them that too, what our options are, other than what's presented right now. But it sounds like, yes, we'll be at our costs too, so.
Then,
Great.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
have we had any discussion with kind of Otter Tail Valley? Because obviously this, obviously this is their kind of like office / kind of like place of business. I mean, do they have any input as a railroad too?
Yes, Councilmember Hicks. Yeah, they were at that diagnostic meeting as well
Right.
with MnDOT. So we did a walkthrough to all three of these intersections. So
All right, so we have a motion to bring this to the council on Monday night for consideration. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you, Brian. One more
Thank you.
item for Brian, and it's an aeronautics equipment grant.
Yes, in the past year, we've had a little bit of discussion about airport state grant for a new airport tractor. MnDOT responded with the final grant offer. I was kind of hoping for a higher cost share, but there might have been more people looking to seek these funds. So MnDOT has provided the final equipment state grant. It's at a 70-30%, 70-30, 70 state, 30% local share for this tractor. I want to know we enhanced the tractor with a loader as well. Spoken with Public Works, and we've agreed that we should recommend we proceed with this tractor. The 30% local match could be funded through the equipment fund. That's amount $26,286. So we could procure this tractor for replacement. Sounds like the existing tractor that's out there will be put back in the Public Works fleet. Retiring a different tractor as well. So sounds like a win-win overall, but that's up for the council to decide. So this is what I'm requesting, a resolution accepting MnDOT state grant offer for airport tractor.
I'll offer that, Your
Thanks,
Honor.
Brian. We have a motion to bring that to the council. Jim, Brent, thank you. Questions for Brian? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Brian. And next, we have some visitors from the school district. We'll call on Superintendent Jeff Drake to tell us about their bond request on May 14th. Good morning,
Good
Jeff.
morning, Your Honor, council members, city staff. No? Okay. Thank you for your time this morning. I want to present a little bit about the upcoming bond election coming up on May 14th. And the proposal is for a new 3 through 5 grade elementary school. It started as a started as part of a strategic planning process that began, this is my 5th year in the district, began shortly after I arrived. We started looking at our academics, our student and staff climate and culture, and our vision for Otter education. The facilities committee was the last one to meet. It is my opinion that facilities are tools that help promote your vision and help you establish your vision. And so going through that process, there were approximately 20 plus members that included school board, administration, staff, faculty, and community members. Ultimately, they came up with 2 major recommendations. The first one was to finish the north half of Lincoln School. That is, we are slated to have occupancy in that facility on July 1st. So kindergarten will start out there this fall. What that will allow us to do is move 5th grade out of Kennedy Secondary School to a more appropriate elementary setting. And then McKinley and Adams will become both grades 1 through 3. The piece also that's important on the second recommendation they made was for a new elementary school. And that would be to replace the 85-year-old McKinley and Adams structures to gain extra insight into the public's potential support for that proposal. We did commission a independent vendor to conduct a survey that was done last November of our entire community. The results of that survey were inconclusive. Essentially, in looking at the data, those, if the vote had gone out in November, those in favor and those opposed fell within the margin of error, which was about 2.5% to 3%. So they said if you had gone out for a vote in November, the results would have been too close to call. However, the school board did think there was enough sentiment and positive support towards the project that it deserved going before the public for a vote this spring. We received a positive review and comment from the Minnesota Department of Education. It was about a 30-plus page application that is a requirement Their staff reviews the proposals, looks at them based on merit and service or contributions to the community. Does this make sense? They determined ultimately that they are in support of the plan. They gave it a positive review. It was signed off by the Commissioner, Willie Jett, from MDE, and that gave us the go-ahead to proceed with the bond election this spring. The proposal's for a 102,000 square foot structure. To give you some idea of the size of that, the former Target building, currently Lincoln School, is 89,000 square feet. So just a little bit bigger than the old Target building. Again, housing grades 3 through 5. The site would also be home to a proposed middle school soccer field and middle school baseball field. The building site, the city council was involved with the school board in talking about many possible sites within the area. There aren't a lot of parcels large enough to accommodate our school and give us the elbow room that we needed. Ultimately, we did settle and purchase a site, 29 acres. It is adjacent to Hilltop Celebration Church and across Highway 210 from the Prairie Wetlands Learning Center. That location was very important to us. The location helped establish the grade level configuration of the proposed school, 3 through 5, because of our strong Prairie Science classroom program. Currently, our students from KSS in Cleveland spend about 35 to 40 minutes round trip every day on a bus, transporting them back and forth to the site. This location would eliminate much of that seat time. And as recently as last Friday, I have had conversations with officials with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. There is strong interest, if this school is passed, in putting in a pedestrian underpass or walkway underneath 210 to connect the two sites. One other thing, I'll go back and talk about advantages to the site. It was within city limits, which was important to us for convenience to our patrons, and it had city utilities running to it, and then 2 egress-ingress locations off Cascade for connectivity. The cost is $54.82 million, payable over 22 years at an estimated bond sale rate of 5%. The new configuration of facilities in the district, Lincoln School would continue to house our early childhood family education program and honor preschool. It would house kindergarten. Cleveland would move to grades 1 and 2. The new school serving grades 3 through 5, and then KSS having a 6 through 8 middle school and a 9 through 12 high school. Facility assessment within the district, we have 670,000 square feet. The average age per square foot in the Fergus Falls Public School District, this was a weighted average, is 45 years. And the last time the community built a completely from the ground up new school dates back to 1968. That was the result of destruction of the former junior high due to fire. And so a new junior high was built. Eventually that became Fergus Falls Middle School. And then in 2010, there were modifications and expansion of the middle school to accommodate Kennedy Secondary School, currently serving grades 5 through 12. We had an independent consultant, ATS&R. ATS&R was the architectural firm that did the 2010 remodel and expansion of KSS. They did a facility evaluation for all of our buildings, with the exception of KSS, because that was relatively recent. The results that you see on the screen are items that need to be addressed with McKinley and Adams. You have concrete work, asphalt work, steel, fencing, tuck pointing with all the brickwork outside. Again, these are 85-year-old structures, roof systems that need to be replaced, mechanical issues, some design issues in terms of layout and service with food service, And then you also have some technology pieces. It's interesting to me that they say that the cabling for our technology does not conform to current standards. That's because it was installed before standards existed. And so it gives you some idea of some of the infrastructure challenges that we have with those sites. The schools lack, so we also get into an educational adequacy study, again, conducted by ATS&R. They look at the facilities, propensity or capability of supporting modern instructional practices. The sites simply lack this dedicated space to perform the services and supports that are expected of modern day education. In particular, special ed services, occupational therapy, mental health support, Title I, reading and math support, ADSIS, reading and math support. So a host of services that we provide now on a daily basis because they're necessary to ensure that our students are receiving the help that they need. Those schools were not designed to support those kinds of efforts. Those things weren't part of public education back in 1939 when the structures were designed and built. You have some core areas that are undersized, some of our major facilities with the gym, some classroom issues, and again, those special ed supports. Sites are extremely undersized by modern standards. Both McKinley and Adams are both under 3 acres. Compare that to the proposal for a 29-acre site for a new school for some additional green space and elbow room. Parking is a challenge. You also have challenges with pickup and drop-off in the morning and after school with a lot of residential traffic. If you think back to the history of the Fergus Falls Public Schools, at one time I believe we had 7 elementaries. And those were considered neighborhood schools. The students walked to and from school on a daily basis. That is no longer the model. Frankly, from an efficiency standpoint, we would financially be unable to staff and keep up with the maintenance on a 7 elementary neighborhood school model if it were in existence today. Part of this is consolidating buildings and becoming more efficient in in our operational costs. Also, some of the programming that you see is dictated by our lack of space. Because of a lack of parking, where in many school districts you might see a winter concert that involves all of the students at a particular grade level, because we don't have the facilities to accommodate those kinds of things, then we do 1 or 2 classrooms at a time paired and typically do those throughout the day. I want to talk a little bit about Cleveland because this proposal would solve some issues with Cleveland as well. So our band and orchestra students don't have the large group rehearsal space at Cleveland, and so they end up being transported back and forth to KSS during the school day. Again, that results in lost instructional time and is inefficient. One of the big questions in the community is what would happen to McKinley and Adams School if the new 3rd through 5th grade structure was to be passed. There are some ideas up here. There could be many more. One possibility would be childcare. We know that childcare is difficult to find in our area and can impede our economic development. Another option would be apartments and or assisted living. There has been, not by the school, but multiple surveys that have suggested that the community would benefit from a youth center. Some examples of some of these types of concepts are in Perham and Detroit Lakes, where they have a Boys and Girls Club that have proven to be highly effective and impactful for their youth. And then the county is just finishing up an analysis of a family resource center model where basically multiple service providers are housed in a single facility under one roof to reduce barriers to our families and services to our children to make that more convenient and efficient for them. I want to again talk about the financial impact. I know that's of great importance to our constituents. So the average home value in the Fergus Falls Public School District is approximately $250,000. If this were passed, it would result in a $100 annual tax increase, $8 per day, $8 per month, 27 cents per day. That for the average residential home, that would be the tax impact if passed. We also see tax impacts on other classifications of property. If you have a commercial business and it is valued at $500,000, the tax increase on an annual basis would be $453. If you are the owner of seasonal rec property valued at $500,000, the tax increase, if passed, would be $20 a month. Farmland is a little more complicated to explain. There is a subsidized appropriation from the state for ag land, and it's pretty substantial. It's 70%. So if you have a farm homestead, your house, your garage, and 1 acre is considered separately, but your ag classification, your ag land classification, if your land was valued at, let's say, $5,000 an acre, under this proposal, your land would be assessed at 37 cents per acre annually, and then you would multiply that by the number of acres in your parcel. This is an example of some ag property. This is valued at just under $2.3 million. If this bond were passed, it would result in an annual increase to that landowner of $280. This table depicts the current tax impact of the buildings that we're paying off with the bonding. You see that the major piece of tax impact is coming off our taxpayers after taxes payable 2027. That is the big KSS remodel and expansion that happened back in 2010. So this community is very close to having paid that off. The next one that you see that is sizable comes off the tax rolls after taxes payable 2030, and that was the Cleveland classroom expansion and the gymnasium that took place there. Then basically after that, all that is left is some lease levy dollars. That's in kind of that magenta or purple color on the top, and then a little bit of bonding left below that. The blue columns with the white dots in there, that would represent new debt. Notice that it is feathered in to some existing debt if this were passed. That was to maintain a level tax impact across the entire 22 years of the payback period. So why is this important? The mission of the Fergus Falls Public Schools is to prepare productive and engaged members of society by creating an environment where all students reach their full potential. So the proposal is about kids. It's about having the space and the tools necessary for us to complete our vision for outer education. School safety, a high priority. Academic student learning, where we have spaces where we can be teaching those higher order thinking skills, the collaboration, communication, leadership, all those skills that are most in demand by today's employers. Student learning and support's a high priority as we look at the discussions about student learning and the needs for Title I and ADSYS services for reading and math, the supports through special education. Those things are really important, especially post-pandemic, in helping students reacquire their skills and get their proficiencies up where they need to be. We talk a lot about the mental health of our students. We've seen that certainly as a high topic of conversation during and post-pandemic. We need the spaces to be able to deliver those specialized services. The fine arts piece, that would solve the transportation issues and lost instruction time for band and orchestra. And then with the student activity support, the presence of additional green space, which we have very, very little of in the district, and the soccer field and middle school baseball field. I had a chance to listen to a state demographer last June. She indicated that Minnesota as a state is entering a 10-year period where our labor force will not meet the demands for, will not fill the demands for employment. And so as you think about these challenges strategically, that means a couple things, both from a state perspective and from a local perspective. Both have need to adopt similar philosophies. That means that as a state and as a local community, we have to be attractive enough to draw people in from other states or other countries to fill our gap in employment if we want to have a strong fiscal system and enjoy prosperity. In order to do that, I would argue that having a strong educational system is going to be at or near the top priority in order to attract people to come and move in this community, especially if they are raising families. Other strong considerations is the accessibility to affordable childcare, living wage employment, affordable housing, access to quality health care, and then I would also say, to the city's credit, investment in amenities that increase our quality of life. All those factors draw people to communities and help them be economically prosperous. This is an example or a list of the top occupations when Adams and McKinley were built back in 1939. I want to contrast that with today's workforce, and you can see the difference in the tasks that we have in terms of preparing students for these types of careers. We are preparing students right now for careers that don't even exist. That is our challenge in order to be visionary enough to give them the skills and adaptability that they need to be successful in the workplace, successful entrepreneurs. If we went back and talked about people that were interested in going into agriculture, that doesn't look the same either. Right now, you're probably in a tractor that's controlled by GPS. I just heard from a gentleman the other day that the next wave will be unmanned tractors. You can lay fertilizer down where you've had a soil analysis, and the machines will dictate the exact amount of fertilizer per various plots in your land so that you're not wasting product on areas that don't need it. When you go harvest your crop at the end of the season, you can pull into a grain elevator, completely unmanned, unload your corn. It will assess its moisture content. It will grade the corn. It will disperse it in appropriate bins, weigh it, and kick out payment to the farmer. That's where the world is heading, and artificial intelligence is going to have an increasingly marked impact on careers and preparation for kids. So our vision, as you look at the top 10 skills of 2025, you see those analytical, higher order thinking skills, you see collaboration, communication, leadership, perseverance, work ethic, highly technical background and knowledge. So they need to be fluent in technology. As you look at the Otter Portrait of a Graduate, so keep in mind this was created about 4 years ago. And as I look at the work that the district did at that time and the major pieces with content knowledge, creative problem solving, communication, character, and contributing citizen, I could look at every one of those sectors and say that as a vision, this district's approach to education has prepared us well to serve our kids in a way that will make them contributing employees, entrepreneurs, again, active citizen members. I talked about this a little bit earlier. There had been concerns about the support from a staffing perspective of U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I've heard both from Will Meeks and Neil Powers within the last couple weeks of their ongoing commitment to support of staffing. They have committed a director, supervisor out on that site, and essentially a naturalist or teaching support, learning support person that will be on there on site by the start of the school year. And they have indicated that the staffing challenges that they face are viewed as a short-term issue, and that long-term they believe that they will be able to restore staffing support for this program closer to what it was in the past. And again, to reiterate their support for the vision of this school, we've had very earnest conversations about the potential for a pedestrian walkway connecting the two sites to one another. If this vote would pass, there would be a design phase involving community staff input. Then it would go out for a bidding phase, and then ultimately the construction phase. Total timeline from start to finish would be about 2.5 to 3 years. I can say that there has not been a single brick that's been designed to date. We would wait and do that work if the community supports the proposal. Also, the placement of the school that you saw in maroon, that's about a 120,000 square foot structure. That's just a placeholder. None of that ultimately has been decided. That would be the work of the architects and engineers if the community supports the program. So in summary, it's really about kids. This is about creating the spaces that they need to reach their full potential. And it's about having the tools to complete our vision and carry out our vision. It's one more. I also wanted to talk just a little bit, address the council about franchise fees. So based on our calculations, this could impact us potentially $40,000 annually. What I want to point the council's attention to is our state funding compared to 508 Minnesota public and charter schools. As you can see, we have our challenges financially. We are at very near the bottom of public schools and charters in terms of state funding. The franchise fee, as you know from this presentation, I'm well versed in capital project challenges. With average square footage of 45 years, some buildings 85 years and older, we understand the challenges of trying to keep up and maintain things. But I would ask the council to consider, if it goes forward with franchise fees, to exempt the school district from those. Those tax dollars generated were done with the intention of educating this community's youth. And I would ask that in terms of the school, you place pupils as a higher priority over potholes. So with that, I can certainly address any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Jeff. Anyone from the council have any questions for Superintendent Drake?
I've got. You never mentioned the date of the election. Maybe that would be something you should put in the presentation.
May 14th.
May 14th.
Although people can certainly vote in advance, 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, people can do absentee balloting in the district office at the school.
And then I got a couple of other questions. Has there been any traffic study on Cascade? Because I know I've already had some residents reach out with concerns about obviously the impact on Cascade, with kind of the obviously vehicles coming in and out.
We have not engaged in a traffic study on Cascade. I did have a question from a community member whether there would be additional stop signs, et cetera, just to lower the speed of traffic along Cascade. And that also reminds me, I have had several people question, again, the water pressure in that part of the city with assurances that a new school wouldn't either suffer from low water pressure or impact the other residents with low water pressure challenges. I have assured them in conversations with the city that the water supply is plentiful. It's just a matter of putting the infrastructure in place to assure the pressure that we need. So that has been my response to those questions.
I've got a couple more if I can keep going, Your Honor. Go ahead. On the list of jobs, I would like to see some emphasis on tech jobs. We have a shortage in the state equally of plumbers, electricians, of kind of practical, for not everybody can be an AI computer whiz, and I think we should have some education towards those other skills that are extremely important. we have a lot of manufacturing in town. If we can't fill those positions because everyone wants to be an AI whiz, then that's going to reduce the kind of jobs in town.
Yes, let me address that. So we have, I would say we have some of the finest vocational space and programming in the region. We have a state-of-the-art autos lab, but we've also invested in programming over the last couple of years. We added an ag instructor, so we have 2 people in the ag department, and our vocational programming has continued to increase, as has our work-based learning program. We have a wonderful business partnership in the community with CNAs. CNAs, the lack of those people seeking those jobs is impacting some of our local businesses because they have unfilled beds, not because they don't have people that would benefit from the service and are waiting. They don't have the people to provide the care. So to that, the only thing else I would add to that is even the vocational jobs are seeing more and more infusion of tech capability to carry those out. We had an interesting, this is to me, an interesting anecdote. So I think it was an employee from Nelson Ford spoke to our autos kids, and he asked them what they thought of electric vehicles. And several of the gentlemen in the class said, well, we really like to hear the rumble of our truck engines. So he said, what if I told you that you could make X amount of dollars if you're a highly proficient mechanic, technician on electric vehicles? And when they heard the number, I don't remember what it was, but it was significant. That was an eye-opener for those students.
Then I just wondered, like, you mentioned like lease payments on your debt service at the moment. Is there any public input on kind of like the lease portion, on the Lincoln, or is that something you can just kind of add as debt?
So we're with Lincoln. We ended up financing. The first part was phase 1 was about, I'm going to say $8 to $8.5 million. Phase 2 is around 10. We will end up finishing that project for less than 50 cents on the dollar compared to new construction. So we used existing money that had been saved for a portion of that project. And then we also use some of our capital dollars and our long-term facility maintenance dollars to make the payments on that current debt.
So when does that expire? Do you know off the top of your head?
Did we do 15? I think we did 15. Yeah, I believe it was 15 years on that.
From the commencement?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then the other kind of question I have is that have you had any conversations with like M-State? Because recently I heard that Detroit Lakes campus has got an affiliation with the school district and are using some of those facilities, to obviously to do, the education at your level.
Yes.
And with enrollment kind of falling, is that something that we should look at in terms of repurposing kind of a facility that is already involved in education as opposed to building a new one?
Yeah, excellent question. So I did have conversations with President Brimhall. Those date back to probably a year and a half ago. The conversations at that time had more to do with the land that M-State owns between their current campus and Fergus Home and Hardware as a potential building site. But it was a very pleasant conversation. President Brimhall did indicate that currently their focus on the Fergus Falls campus would be on projects that would enhance the programming that's already taking place on those campuses. So I would say if something were to happen out there in the future, it would be more likely an extension of perhaps some of the vocational programming, et cetera, that's taking place on the high school campus not so much things that we might want to have going on at the elementary level.
And then I got one last question, and then I'm done.
Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
How do we help you get from 479th or 454th to kind of higher up this scale of 508? I mean, what's dragging our number down? Because that obviously would increase, I'm assuming, your funding per child.
Correct.
Which should have a bigger impact, as much as anything on your financial status.
So the funding increases would definitely help on the operational side. That would make a big difference. The most common solution to that would be to pass a local operating levy, which again would be contingent on local voter support, and it would increase taxes.
So,
But that's the main factor that's separating our district's funding and pushing it towards the bottom in comparison to many other districts in the state, is the lack of an operating levy.
So what you're saying is that there has to be like matching dollars. If you have more matching dollars, you get more from the state.
It's not necessarily matching dollars. It's some of it can be augmented with state aid. It kind of depends on your financial structure of the district. But essentially what you're doing is going before the voters, and let's say that your proposal is to increase your revenue by $400 per student. And so that's the question on the ballot, and there are tax increases to your constituents associated with that level of increased revenue, and that's what the ballot question entails.
Right. Okay.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you. I'm done.
So what you're saying is many of the school districts above us have operating levies that don't pay for capital building expenses, just for the operations of the school.
Correct.
As opposed to the capital bond referendum that we're going to vote on May 14th.
Correct.
Thanks, Jeff. Any other questions from the council of Jeff? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Superintendent
Appreciate
Jake,
it.
for your time today. We do have one last item on the agenda. I know it's getting after 8 o'clock, but we'll go through this. It's an update from the Greater Fergus Falls and the City of Fergus Falls Working Group. Council members Rachel, Hicks, and Kwame are on that group. Councilmember Kwame chairs that group, so I'm going to call on you at this time to walk us through this. And we also have Representative Lance from Greater Fergus Falls in the audience if we have any questions.
Yeah, very good. The formation of this committee was chosen by the council in January just to take a look at how the council relates to Greater Fergus Falls, how the city staff relates to Greater Fergus Falls, and if there could be some improvements in various areas. Looking to try and see some gains, you might say, in how things go. And there were lots of ideas discussed. We came up with 3 priorities that are listed in the memos that you got here. First of all, wanting to see some proactive efforts being made to sell city-owned land. We talked a lot about various parcels of land, but the 3 that were probably the biggest pieces that we'd like to see some movement on are the dairy property, the Norgren property, and the RTC. There's lots of other property that the city owns and infill lots here and there and things like that. But to see somebody come forward with a proposal, there's been, a lot of patience exhibited, frankly, over the years, waiting for somebody to come and do something with this or do something with that. And to have some more proactive effort made seems like it'd be a good idea, and Greater Fergus Falls seems to be the correct agency, so to speak, to facilitate that. So that would be a priority area. Also then, just generally economic development, there's lots of work being done, and we'll hear about this thing and we'll hear about that thing, and some people get some news and some people get other news, and it just seemed like it might be best to get a more formalized report on a periodic basis and some more formalized communication established so that the news that we hear is consistent and predictable as far as knowing when we're going to get it and what we're going to know, And so there was a desire to see some improvement there. And the third area was, again, kind of related as far as the communication and also accountability, and that was to suggest that the city council place a member on the Greater Fergus Falls Board of Directors, just to put someone right in the conversation, so to speak. Those three were the biggest three. To try and draft something that the council can vote to approve or not is typically done by having the staff write up something in the form of a resolution, and then we can debate it and, you know, vote to pass it or not. There's some other notes that are included in the packet. A previous memo that was in place in 2021 that kind of detailed some of Greater Fergus Falls' responsibilities, and then the proposal that is laid out for specifically selling properties is also included in there. And where it comes down to is the money, whether to just ask this to be done or to actually put some sort of incentive in place by paying for it. The proposal is to pay for it using funds through the Port Authority and having the responsibility for the management of it be through the Port Authority with a stipend, a monthly stipend, and a commission paid on specific properties that are sold. The proposed structure would be $4,000 a month and a 5% commission. These are among the details that could be weighed out and discussed and modified if you like. And so that's what's in front of us today.
Thanks, Scott. And I know when we formed that committee, I think part of the reason you wanted to bring this is we asked that they give an update by May 1st, and it's May 1st, so here's the update. And
here we go.
The group's going to continue to work on this. Is that accurate?
Absolutely.
And it would bring forward to the council any changes to the official contract with Greater Fergus Falls. If anyone has a desire to serve on that board, talk to me. I think we're talking to Greater Fergus Falls about who that member or members might be. So if you have a desire, make sure and make that interest known to me. Any questions of the council for Scott or of the working group?
Can I formally make the motion to bring this to the council to have the staff draft a resolution for us?
Certainly.
No?
It's a motion. Someone like to
I'll second it.
Scott, all in favor of bringing that motion and that resolution to the council, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign.
Your
That
Honor,
motion.
does that have to be done by this next Monday? I don't think that's possible, is it? No.
Probably not, and I don't know that we were expecting it
No,
to
I
necessarily
just want
crank
to make
out
sure
that
we don't
quickly.
try to push that in.
Sure.
And then-
we'll have plenty of time to discuss it as we go through that process. Any
Right.
changes that are official to that contract and that agreement.
And then you had suggested that this group would be continuing to work. I don't know that we expected to continue to work.
Okay, so this is.
If we were asked to go back and do some more, you know, once there's something from the staff, great. But at this point, we're expecting that it's in the hands of the staff once we vote on Monday.
Well, thank you.
I have a question.
Andrew's got a question.
Knowing the intent is to move in this direction or to consider this, we'll move the resolution at a faster pace, but wondering if the intent is to begin the relationship in terms of financial obligations at the first of the year as opposed to mid-budget, knowing that we probably don't have a budget to do this starting now. So I guess my point is, we won't delay this, but it probably isn't gonna be able to go into effect until the first of the year, and we'll have to budget through the tax levy committee for this
That
cycle.
was the intent.
And that's what we had talked about.
Perfect.
I think that was the understanding going in. All right, with that, there's nothing else to come before the council. We're adjourned.